Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my October mid-month wrap-up, so let's just get right into it. So far this month I have already read 15 books. I'm going to do this mid-month wrap-up in the same way that I did last month, where I'm only going to talk about books in depth if I'm not planning on talking about them in another video. If I know that I read them for another video, I'm just going to tell you the rating and whether I liked it or not, and that's pretty much it. So the first book that I read is one of those books. It is Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. This book I read for my I Read 10 Witchy Romances video, which is already up, so I will have that link down below if you want to watch an in-depth review of all the witchy romances I've read so far this year. And this one I gave 3 stars to. It was okay. It wasn't anything super spectacular. It had a little too much like fantasy elements to it for me. I think it was a little too clunky in that regard, but it was an okay witchy romance if you're looking for that. Next, I reread The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I'm not usually one to reread books, but I was filming I think it was my fall romance rec video, and I mentioned this book in it, and apparently I just like sold myself on reading it because I was like, you know what, you're right, Jessica, this book is great. And so I ended up picking it up again, and I was like, well, at least if no one else takes my recommendations, I take my own recommendations. So I reread this book because it does have one of my favorite like fall scenes in a book. It's got a really cute Halloween scene in it that I just love. And so once I was done filming that video, I put a hold on this at my library again and got it and listened to it. Really loved it, 5 stars like always. I just really love this book. It's such a good slow burn. And now I feel like now that I've read that, I feel like I'm ready to read Hands Down, because I didn't want to read that until I had reread The Wall of Winnipeg, just so I could like get back with Zach, I guess. And so I'm excited to get to that book now. Next was 3 Dirty Secrets by Nikki Sloane. I mentioned in I think it was my October TBR that I wanted to read this book, and I said that this was the last book in the series. Turns out it's not. I don't know why I thought that. I think it's because my library only has the first 4, but I thought that this went up to 4 books, but it goes up to like at least 6, so I don't know if I'm going to continue on. Obviously my library doesn't have them, so for now I don't really have a choice. But this one was definitely my least favorite in the series, for sure. It doesn't have a ton of plot in any of these books. This one I think actually had the most interesting plot because it's about a secret like undercover FBI agent in the clubs that you see in the first books. But I just found that like their actual relationship I wasn't a fan of. This couple liked to sort of like sleep around with other people a lot, and I just wasn't really interested in that. I feel like they slept with other people in this book more often than they slept with each other, and I just like wasn't vibing with that. I didn't even know that that was a thing that I didn't like in romances until I read this one, but it turns out that that is something that I don't like. And so I wasn't a huge fan of that. I found it was really boring. I wasn't really interested in it. I did like the plot line, like I said. I thought it was the most interesting in that regard, but other than that, wasn't a huge fan. I think I gave this one 2.5 stars maybe, or 3. Next, I did a video where I read 4 YA thrillers, so I will have that video linked down below if you want to watch that one as well. And so I read most of those books this month as well. The first one was Nothing More to Tell by Karen M. McManus. This is her newest release. I really enjoyed this one, gave it 4.5 stars. I just thought this was really good. I like her writing. Like I said, I talk more about it in that video, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. Next was The Project by Courtney Summers, again in that same video. This one was okay, gave it 3 stars, didn't love it, didn't think it was anything super spectacular, but it was an okay read. And then lastly for that video I read The Ivies by Donne, again in that video obviously, and this one follows a group of girls who basically there's like 5 of them I think, and they each have one Ivy League school that they're going to apply to, and because they're not competing against each other, because they've each got one school they're applying to, they basically work together to wipe out all the rest of the class. Like if someone else's GPA is getting too high, they do something to sabotage it, and they're all working together to do that, and then one of them ends up dead. So this one follows that plot line. This one was okay. Again, didn't love it. I thought the ending of this one was kind of stupid, which kind of ruined the book for me, but it was an okay read up until that point. Next were some more books that I read for that witchy romance video. The first one was A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. Did enjoy this one, gave it 4 stars. Would have liked a little more focus on the romance plotline in this one, but I think I did enjoy the overall vibes and plot of this, so I wasn't super disappointed by that. Next, again for that video, was A Letter to 3 Witches by Elizabeth Bass. This one was just not good. I gave this one 2 stars. Did not like it. After that, I read To Love Jason Thorn, and I actually bought this book after I read it. I loved it that much. I gave this 5 stars. I was not expecting to love this, to be honest. I am so tired of reading TikTok recommended books that I end up giving 3 stars to or not liking at all. I just find their recs are based solely on like the smut in the books. Like that's all people seem to care about. And I just feel like there are so many better books out there, but this was so freaking good. Like, I'm still shocked that I love this as much as I did. I'm actually currently reading To Hate Adam Connor, and I'm loving that one too. I'm only on chapter 6, and I actually put it on my birthday list because my birthday's coming up, and I'm like, I already know I want to own that one too. But I'm just obsessed with this one. I will say, this is super random, and if anyone can help me with this, I would appreciate it because no one seems to know. But basically, they've changed this book. And I don't know if a lot of people know that because you'd have to read the audiobook and this book at the same time to probably pick up on it. I only noticed because it changed while I was reading it, which was kind of a pain in the butt. But basically, there's a scene at the end of chapter 23 where in the original version he gets her off. And in this new version, they've changed it to them cuddling, which is just so weird to me. Like, I don't know why that happened or whose idea that was. But personally, I would like to find a copy of the original book. And I have no idea what version that is. I think it might be the 2015 version, but I think it does have the cartoon cover, which is throwing me off because I think it should be the shirtless guy cover, or like almost shirtless guy. I think he's wearing like a tank top or something, but I don't know. I'd like to find that version. I thought that's what I was ordering. This said it was like published in 2015, but this says 2021 on the back, so it's not a 2015 copy. But I may return this and hopefully get that, but I loved this book. Like I said, this one is a brother's best friend. It is one of them is famous. She basically is obsessed with this guy from the time she's a kid, and they sort of lose contact over the years. He has some family issues and leaves, and she doesn't see him for a long time, and now they are adults. She is a best-selling author, and her book has just been picked up for like to become a movie, and he is now a famous actor, and he is basically being considered to be the male lead in her movie of her book, and so they reconnect, and I just love this one. It was so good. Like I said, I just started the second one, and it's already like I'm in love with that one too. So these are not overhyped. If you're considering picking these up, 1000% do it. They are so good. Next was Witch Please by Anne Aguirre. This is another one for that witchy romance rec video. Didn't love this one, gave it 2 stars. Honestly, I technically DNF'd this one, but I'm not counting it as a DNF because I wasn't really paying attention anyway. So I think if I had read those last 2 hours of the audiobook, I wouldn't know any more than I do now, so I'm not considering it a DNF. Next, I read When in Rome by Sarah Adams. This one I wasn't expecting to like as much as I ended up liking. I gave this 4 stars, and I think the reason I wasn't expecting to like this was I thought it actually took place in Rome, but it takes place in Rome, Kentucky, so it's not really Rome. And for whatever reason, I know there's like a lot of people that are really like hardcore obsessed with books set in Europe, and I'm just not one of those people, and so I feel like a lot of times those books just don't really appeal to me. Not that I have anything against Europe or anything, it's just I've never been there. I don't have any like connection to it really, so it's not something that I'm drawn towards. But I think this one is really cute. This one is like another one of them is famous. It's a small town. She is a famous pop star, and she decides she's gonna go to Rome, but she doesn't have time to go to Italy, so she looks up Rome, and she ends up in Rome, Kentucky. She drives in, and she is like, okay, I'm just gonna take, you know, some time off, you know, by myself, hang out, whatever. And her car ends up breaking down literally in this guy's front lawn. And he comes out and he's like, okay, like, what are you doing? Like, I can help you. And she's like, no way I'm getting out of the car. You're gonna murder me and whatever. And like, the beginning is so funny. And she ends up staying in the town, and she ends up staying with him because the whole town is kind of basically trying to get him to get with her because he has had like, you know, traumatic relationships in the past. It was very Gilmore Girls-esque, especially there's like an inn owner who tells them that there's no vacancy at the inn. And it just seemed like she reminded me a lot of like Miss Patty from Gilmore Girls, where she was like meddling and she was purposely trying to get these two together, and you know, like everyone knew what she was doing, but she just reminded me a lot of Miss Patty from Gilmore Girls. And so I really love this one. Like I said, wasn't really expecting to, but it was a really good small town romance. Next was Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. This is obviously her new release. This one was good. I gave this one 4 stars, or did I give it 3 stars? I honestly don't remember. It might have been 3 stars. I didn't love this one. It was okay, but I feel like it wasn't anything super memorable. Even now, like I read it like last week and I already feel like I'm forgetting what even happened in this. But I know I didn't love that they sort of painted them as, I find a lot of books do this, they're like workplace enemies to lovers, like they're sort of trying to get the Hating Game vibe, but I find a lot of books just aren't doing it as good as the Hating Game did. I think for me to enjoy that trope, I need to truly believe that this guy hates her. And I just find that all the books I've read since the Hating Game, I don't believe that. Like Joshua just had this vibe to him in that book where you were like, maybe he really can't stand her, like, who knows. And in this book, it was just super obvious right from the get-go that he was obsessed with her and in love with her, and that was why he was being weird. Like, it wasn't super exciting. I didn't really have an interest in, like, the space sort of aspect of this, I guess. I don't know. I was never into science, so maybe these books just aren't for me, but I did really love The Love Hypothesis, so I was hoping I would really love this one. But it was just kind of okay. Like I said, I don't even remember a ton about it now, like a week later, so I guess that's not really a good sign. Next was Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin. This was another one for the witchy romance recs. This was okay. I gave this 2 stars, I think maybe 2.5. It had potential, but it just wasn't followed through well enough for me, and not one of my favorites from that video for sure. Next was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one I was so excited to get because I actually got like a skip the line copy of the audiobook of this from my library, which was exciting because I thought I was gonna have to read the physical book. And this is gonna sound so weird because I own so many physical books, but I actually, right now, I find I really hate reading physical books. I don't know, I just don't have the attention span for them at the moment. I'm hoping that comes back, but I find when I pick up a physical book right now, I'm putting it down every chapter. Like, I feel like I have to be doing something else. And with audiobooks, I can be working and getting things done while I'm listening to them. So I was excited to get that, read it in one sitting, really enjoyed this one. I will say it's not as romance heavy as you would imagine. It follows a girl who sees ghosts, and she's a ghostwriter, and she meets her new editor. And the day she meets him, she's like, wow, he's kind of cute, whatever, but right after she gets a call that her dad has died, so she flies back to her hometown to help her family, who runs a funeral home, take care of the funeral and all of that. And she's home, and she starts seeing this guy, like the editor from her work, in her small town, and she's like, well, this is weird. Then she realizes that he is a ghost, and they sort of start getting to know each other because he's just hanging around her all the time and she's the only one that can see him, and that's just sort of what happens. Like I said, I liked this one. It was definitely unique. It's very good for spooky season, I will give it that, but like, I would say the last quarter of this book was the only part that really had any romance to it. The rest of it was mostly just focused on her dad's funeral and her family dynamics and what the family was doing for the funeral. So I don't know that that would be for everyone, especially if you're like someone who doesn't like reading about death. I think this would probably be a very bad book for you. And that's something that I personally am not like a huge fan of in books. Like, I do try to avoid. I didn't find this one was terrible in that regard. But like, something I would want to know going in for sure is that it's very heavy on like the death in the family sort of focus. And so just, you know, something to be aware of. I gave this one 4 stars. Like I said, I wish there had been more romance to it, but I did enjoy it and did think it was a good spooky season read. Lastly, I read The Christmas Clash by Suzanne Park. I was really excited about this book. This was my 2nd Christmas book of the year. Very excited about it, but it really fell flat for me. I gave this one 3 stars, and I said in my review that I was being generous with that 3 stars. It was probably more along the lines of a 2-star book. This book just, I don't know. The synopsis is that it deals with a girl who works at the mall taking Santa pictures with like the mall Santa, like she's the photographer, and the boy in it is working at the North Pole VR experience. And the cover, as you can see, is like super cute and Christmassy, and I was like, okay, I'm ready for all the cheesy Christmassy goodness. There was none of that in this book at all. Like, the only mention of Christmas in this was that she worked with Santa and he worked at the VR experience, but honestly, like, it could have been any VR experience, and she could have been just like a normal mall like portrait photographer for all that it really mattered. Like, there was no Christmas cookie baking or tree decorating or putting up the lights or like any of that in this book, and I was just like, why did you go out of your way to market this as a Christmas book when it's just not? And it follows a guy and a girl again. They work in the mall, but they also, both of their parents own a restaurant in the food court, and they are like competing restaurants. Like, they don't like each other, their families don't like each other, so there's sort of this like forbidden aspect of like they can't get together because their parents hate each other. But it was supposed to be like an enemies to lovers, and I found right off the bat they were not enemies. The only reason they weren't like best friends was because their parents were like, no, you can't hang out with him, he's from, you know, the evil family sort of thing. And so they weren't hanging out in front of their parents because their parents didn't want them together. But other than that, they seemed fine with each other. Like, there's really no enemies to lovers vibes there. Like I said, no Christmas vibes. It was very much just the story of 2 rival restaurants and a mall being shut down, which, to be honest, I've read before. It was very basic. Obviously, this is YA, and I have been trying to expand my YA, you know, reading. And so I was excited to read this one and hopefully recommend it, because I'm hoping to do like a just YA Christmas rec video at some point. But honestly, like, this one was just not good. And like I said, there was no Christmas in it. Like, I didn't get that. I don't know why you would get so much, like, put so much effort into marketing your book as a Christmas book and then just not have Christmas in it. Like, that was just so weird to me. And so didn't love this one. But that is everything I have read so far this month. I'm currently, at the time I'm filming this, reading To Hate Adam Connor and loving it. And so that is everything for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I will see you next time.